Hello everyone, this is Professor Steve Martin of Des Moines Area Community College Criminal Justice Program, and be providing a narrative of Chapter 6 where we'll be talking about community policing for CRJ 111, Police and Society. And what we're going to talk about today is the theoretical basis, the principles, and the roles of both the police and the citizens in community policing. We're going to talk about the development and theory behind community policing and how we got to where we are today. And we have three basic historical eras of policing in the United States. The political era, which ran from the mid-1800s through the 1930s. The professional or reform era, which ran from the 1930s through the 1970s. The community policing era, which began around 1980 and has perpetuated itself into the modern day. I would also suggest that maybe we're in a new, what I would call a Homeland Security era. And why do we go through these different eras of policing? Well, because the police during different historical periods of time in our country either didn't serve the needs of the community at that time, or the focus shifted from what the public wanted from their police to another brand of policing. And so we go through these different eras. The civil rights movement in America obviously was one thing that brought about some police change, simply because the police got a lot of bad press back in the 1960s and 70s with rioting and that sort of thing, and the general public didn't trust the police. The social unrest, obviously, lent itself to that too. The professionalization of policing in the last 20, 30 years through more proactive training programs and things like that. Some of the unethical police practices of the past, crime rates that have fluctuated up and then back down again, has prompted maybe the public's views of the different roles of policing in America. And I think that something that's ever present in our society is the distrust of government and the distrust of authority figures, including the police. And different reports have come out on studies regarding policing in America from time to time. It seems like reports are sanctioned on a regular basis, all the way from the Wickersham Commission back in the earlier part of the 20th century up to some of the more modern analysis, which showed that law enforcement agencies were comprised primarily of white males, and so there was more of a focus on hiring minorities and women. Training was inadequate in many areas, and the police didn't get along very well with minority community members. And basically, it was a police against everybody else type of a situation throughout at least the first half of the 20th century. And so we decided that we needed to develop a different style of policing, which actually went more back towards the political era. In the political era of policing, one of the things that was a benefit back then was that the police officer was on the street on foot patrol and developed a very close relationship with those on their particular beats, and it tended to maybe keep crime under control, but the community trusted the foot patrol officer at that time. When we got into the 20th century, automobile patrol became the predominant way that officers patrolled, and so you lost that intimacy with the community, and a greater distrust for the police resulted. And we recognized that the police had an image problem back in the 60s and 70s, and we wanted to get back to a more intimate relationship with the community, if you will, a closer relationship. So through the use of community policing, they reinstituted foot patrols in some high crime areas and actually observed crime rates to go down. Trust for the police rose in some of these areas, and and that was a benefit to both the police and the community. And that's kind of the philosophy behind it. Was that, building trust and relationships again, and also giving the community some say in how their policing resources were actually deployed, kind of based on the problems of a particular neighborhood or a particular city. So they were actually seeking the input and advice from the public on how the police should do their jobs. And in comparing community policing to more traditional policing, a lot of times in textbooks and academic circles, they claim that, well, in traditional policing, we're trying to solve crimes. We're always being reactive. In community policing, we're solving problems. We're looking at the root causes of crime and trying to prevent future crimes by attacking those root problems instead. For instance, an example would be daytime car burglaries. Instead of showing up, taking a report, putting it in a file, we're actually looking at, well, what could the root cause of these car burglaries be? Could it be truancy issues at the local middle school or the high school? Maybe that's where we need to start our investigation and attack these burglaries from that standpoint. So trying to find the root causes of problems instead of always dealing with the aftermath from that standpoint. Looking at the idea of, we try to measure police efficiency based on arrest rates. Sir Robert Peel said, police efficiency isn't necessarily measured by how many arrests you make, but in the absence of crime. Maybe that's the true mark of how efficient the police are. And again, that was a Peelian principle that goes all the way back to 1829 England. Looking at specific crime incidents in traditional policing versus, again, seeking input from the public on what are your true concerns for your neighborhood. And what you find is a lot of times, if you take a rape series, for example, and you talk to the community about that, they're not so much concerned about things like that as they are things like quality of life issues. My neighbors don't mow their yard. There's an abandoned house at the end of the street that kids hang out in, and there's graffiti and things like that everywhere. And those types of things, the quality of life issues are really more important to a lot of people, the average citizen in your neighborhood. And something else we look at is trying to quantify police efficiency based on things like response times. And of course, that's an important part of evaluating the efficiency of police, but also trying to enable or enlist the help of the public is also very important. Community policing and problem solving, COPS is the acronym, a four-part problem solving approach known as SARA, Scanning, Analysis, Response, and Assessment. And with a limited amount of time, I'll try to quickly explain what this is. So again, I use the example of our car burglaries. We're scanning. We have car burglaries that are occurring from 8 in the morning to 3 o'clock in the afternoon. The cars are being broken into or entered after being left unlocked. Things like maybe CDs, cash, things like that are being stolen. And some of these things are showing up at pawn shops. Well, let's analyze the problem. The analysis, who's our likely suspects? It looks like, based on what's being stolen, that maybe it's going to be more youthful offenders. Okay, well, what are we going to do to respond to the problem? Well, there's a couple things we could do. Number one, we could get with our school resource officers and see, who is it that's chronically truant on a regular basis. And then when those students are gone, is that when our burglaries are occurring? Did they seem to not occur so much when these students are present in school? Something else we may do, maybe we'll increase patrols in the area. Maybe we'll try to set up a decoy target, for a burglary or something like that, being a little more proactive. And then after a period of time, we're going to assess to see if what we thought was happening was really happening. Did what we try to implement work? Uh, did we identify maybe the root cause of the problem, which was a juvenile or a school truancy problem? You know, these are the types of things we assess. And again, the assessment may take anywhere from 3 months to a year to decide. Another part of this assessment might be actually doing a before and after survey of a neighborhood. You know, get the neighborhood sense of, you know, what the problem is and whether what the police did was successful or not. And again, the roles of citizens in community policing, um, you know, they could be passive or active. Again, you know, you're looking at things like neighborhood watch, or just simply calling in suspicious vehicles when they see them at you know, drug houses or suspected drug houses or other places of criminal activity. Um, you know, there's a couple different ways you can do that, but most communities will have a core group of citizens that want to be very active and very involved in helping to enhance the quality of life in their communities. And again, the benefits to both the police and the community, um, you know, you're enlisting the help of the community in solving crime problems. They take some ownership for that and have some stock and capital in that. The police officer, the officer on the street, is giving some latitude and some discretion to try to attack the problem the best they can. And really, what it boils down to is the goal of organizations such as the police and even community and citizens groups is not to necessarily arrest our way out of the problem, but actually to try to solve the problem to prevent future ones. And the arrest is actually seen as kind of a last resort. So, to quickly summarize, we talked a little bit about the theory of community policing, the components of problem solving, and how the police and community work together to make their communities a better place to live. And anyway, I hope you enjoyed this, and we'll see you in Chapter 7.